Indigenous peoples of the land. Thank you, Carmen. I always forget about that. The Indigenous peoples of the lands on which we find ourselves this morning, I particularly are coming at you from those of the Matagami and Matachwan First Nations within the Treaty 9 territory. We acknowledge, of course, the importance of these lands, which we each call home. And we do this acknowledgement to continue to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relations between nations and improving our own understanding of local peoples and their cultures. We also acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all of the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this land home. Welcome to our session entitled Protecting Your Data with Multi-Factor Authentication, obviously under our technology integration pillar, proudly supported by NEOnet. Now, this pillar and this service has continued to explore various technological integration components available to make your business better. In partnership with NEOnet in the digital sphere, the Chamber has engaged with our small to medium-sized entrepreneurs to explore what technological adaptations or adoptions they should be considering and explore what funding is available to support those upgrades. At this time, I'd like to pass the floor to MJ Philo, who is the Interim Director for NEOnet. MJ, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. NEOnet is proud to partner with the Chamber under the technology integration pillar of the Reimagined Resiliency series. Small businesses are at a much greater risk when combating cyber threats and attacks. We don't have necessarily the funding like the big guys over on Amazon or Microsoft. So implementing policies and practices to help reduce these risks will not only help your business, but also help your customers at the same time. So we do hope you enjoy the presentation from Great White North Technologies today. Just as everybody, just as a heads up, NEOnet does offer funding for small businesses to help ease the costs associated with cybersecurity implementation through our Business Technology Improvement Fund, which does currently have a wait list. So definitely reach out to us to get on that right away. But we will also be in the next few weeks relaunching the Digital Main Street program, which can also help assist businesses digitally transform their operations. So we highly encourage everyone to reach out to NEOnet for more information and enjoy the presentation.
Thanks, MJ, and I can certainly vouch for the Business Technology Improvement Fund. It has been a great resource for our businesses. So I wanted to thank you for all your support over at NEOnet for those businesses who have subscribed. I'm sure MJ wouldn't mind me sharing her contact information with our attendees today, so do get in touch with her. And of course, our presentation for today. So our very own Paul Brunet, President and CEO of Great White North Technologies, is an IT management service provider located in Timmins, Ontario. With a team of 15 plus talented professionals, they offer IT services throughout Ontario, Nunavut, and across Canada. Active members of our local community and promote the growth of local businesses and organizations. In an ever-evolving industry, they pride themselves on keeping on top of the latest technologies, methodologies, and best practices, likely what we'll hear today as well. They incorporate their wealth of IT knowledge into every value-driven solution that they design and deploy. Paul is also an active and dedicated member of the Chamber Board of Directors. And without further ado, Paul, I pass the floor to you.
Thank you, Cameron. And if maybe you could just flip over the controls, I could share my screen, that would be great. Thank you so much again for the introduction, and it's my pleasure to be here today to talk to every one of you about multi-factor authentication and security in terms of, making sure that your business stays secure and protected for the different types of cybersecurity threats that exist out there nowadays. And
you should have access, Paul.
Okay, let me just
in theory
start share. There we go. All right, so I will share this PowerPoint presentation here. I'll try not to bore you to death, but I figured I would just put something together quick as just to guide through what we're going to be talking about today. So as you're already aware, Cameron did a pretty good job at introducing myself, and again, I'm the president of Great White North Technology Consulting here in Timmins. We've got staff in Timmins, as well as we have remote staff in Toronto and North Bay now. We presently serve Northern Ontario and Nunavut to businesses in pretty much every industry, every sector. We've got a few clients that we're also taking care of out on the West Coast in British Columbia and on the East Coast and those provinces there. So we recently awarded MSP 501 again for 2022 and MSP 500 for the channel company CRN in 2022. So we're pretty proud of that. Before we start, if I could maybe get you to go to slido.com and just put in the participant code GWN MFA. I'm just curious to see, which organizations are currently using multi-factor authentication for email or Office 365, Gmail, whatever it is that you're using for your present email solution. Just as it's an anonymous survey, so we're not here to shame you or nothing. Just want to get an idea of who's using multi-factor authentication to secure their emails. And again, that's just Slido. So that's slido.com. And if you put in GWN MFA as the participant code, you'll be presented with the anonymous poll there. And I'll just switch over to that. All right, we'll keep an eye on that. We'll look at that after. So what is multi-factor authentication? So MFA or 2FA. My 9-year-old son made up a word. He calls it TUFA. So he's got TUFA enabled on his video games to secure even his video game accounts nowadays. So it's kind of interesting. So multi-factor authentication is a method to log on verification where at least 2 different factors of proof are required. MFA is also referred to as 2FA, which stands for two-factor authentication, helps keep your data protected by adding an extra layer of security. So most MFA authentication methodologies involve the different types of information. So something that so such as a password or a PIN, something that you have, which is either a security key or a smartphone, something in your physical presence, and something that you are. So nowadays you've got fingerprint readers, you've got facial recognition built into the different software that you may be using in your computers that you're using. And those there are the different types of items that you could use for multi-factor. Why is multi-factor authentication so important today? Passwords are no longer good enough because there's so many ways of having a password be breached, password being compromised, or password being phished away from you or your users. Multi-factor authentication enhances your organization's security by requiring the users to identify themselves with more than just a username and a password. So now they're prompted with that second factor of authentication, whether it be a one-time code, whether it be fingerprint or facial recognition, or push notification on an app, even something like a phone call or an SMS text message. Those are all additional methods of authenticating. It helps protect against data breaches caused by phishing. So phishing is when you receive an email that mimics something or mimics an organization, or when you're asked different questions by email that would compromise your account for whatever services that you're using. So some of the common things that we're seeing nowadays is phishing attempts that come in pretending that it's a delivery notification or an Amazon order status, and then users click on it and they put in their email, they put in their password to try to get access to the information, and then the third party has the password. So it helps protect against phishing attempts. It helps protect against password theft. A lot of people will actually go in and recycle their password, so they'll use the same password for multiple services. I'm sure none of you guys here use it and do that, or they'll just put in an additional number at the end of the password. So like password 1, password 2, password 3, anytime they're forced to update their password or change their password. So, most recently, Microsoft came out and said, hey, it's no longer best practice to get your users to force the changing of their password, because that's essentially all that people do is they just add a number, increase the number, or they have a pattern and makes it easier. Some interesting stats here is 81% of hacking related breaches were either because of a stolen or weak password. So that's kind of interesting. And you're 99.9% less likely to get compromised when you use multi-factor authentication. So it's not saying that it's impossible to get breached when you're using multi-factor authentication. It's just you're less likely to get compromised. So how do we enable multi-factor authentication? Well, to start, there's a lot of personal apps that you may already be using that support multi-factor authentication. So stuff like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, potentially for some people, your Gmail, your own personal email account. Those are all different apps that would support multi-factor authentication. And you typically find that either in the settings and privacy section in your account or the sign-in and security sections. And it'll walk you through enabling that multi-factor authentication for you in a number of different ways. So you could do that via, like I said, text message, or using a third-party app, or using tokens and security keys and all sorts of things, which we'll go into a little bit later here. I'm just going to monitor here the chat, make sure that there's no questions, and please feel free if you do have any questions. We don't have to wait till the end. Feel free to pop them in the chat. If you'd like me to elaborate on something that we're going through here, please feel free to just pop a message in there, and I'll be happy to touch on that. In terms of enterprise applications, so there's a number of different enterprise applications that you're using today that will support multi-factor authentication. Some of them are easier to enable. Some of them take some coordination and some planning by your IT team to make sure that they're set up correctly and that there's no issues that arise from just enabling it. So for enterprise applications, there's a few steps here that are kind of important to think of when you're looking at multi-factor authentication. So to begin, you want to campaign, you want to train your users. You almost have to sell it to them that it's a good thing, that they're going to want to use it and that it's not going to be too complicated for them. And then you'll want to start by setting up multi-factor authentication, at least on your top level admin accounts. So, the accounts with the most power, the accounts with the most type of access to your organization, whether it be, Office 365. I'm using Office 365 here as an example because our organization uses that, and I would say 95% of our clients are using that as well. So it's something that we're doing a lot of, that we're extremely familiar with. Once you have your administrator accounts enabled with multi-factor authentication, then you'll want to look at, top level execs like the CEO, CFO, senior leaders, and then potentially deploy to a pilot group. You want to see what type of issues that they're having, what type of questions they may have, so that you could plan for the wider deployment to the rest of your users. You'll want to look at stuff like older systems and apps, and some of the applications used like legacy authentication, which is less secure, which may not be compatible with the modern authentication that you need now to use this type of multi-factor authentication with a lot of your applications. So you'll want to have a look at that, make sure that everything's all updated, and make sure that you prioritize the different applications that you enable multi-factor authentication on. Something that may be a little bit older, you may want to exclude for the time being. You may want to have a conditional access policy set up so that logins could only happen from a specific geographical location, like your office. So if multi-factor authentication isn't supported for one of the apps, there are ways to enable more secure logins to happen from different geographical areas, like the IP address for your physical office, instead of allowing logins from all over the world or from any IP address. You want to make multi-factor authentication easy for employees. So not everybody wants to have their personal phone flooded with a bunch of applications that may or may not require them to give additional access. So there are different ways here that we could enable multi-factor authentication, but still giving the employee the comfort that their mobile phone isn't tracked by the organization and whatnot. So one of the ways that we could do this is by just using the Microsoft Authenticator app, which allows for push notification, which makes it nice and simple. The end user doesn't have to go in and put in the 6-digit code and punch it in every time they're logging into their emails. They could just get a pop-up that says, hey, we see that you're trying to log in here. Is this really you? And you click on accept and you get to go. I try to stay away from text messages because text messages are a little bit more susceptible to hacking with something that we call SIM swapping, which is a little bit more popular nowadays, where a third party will go to your telephone service provider and pretend that they're you and essentially get access to your cell phone account and just provision a new SIM card and then bypass that text message multi-factor authentication. This is not just for the type of hacking where somebody's just trying to get access to your email account if you're just a regular Joe, so to speak. This is more towards like a targeted hacking attempt for hackers that are trying to get into a specific organization. So we try to stay away from the text messages. The other step is to have a support plan. So obviously, when you're deploying multi-factor authentication, you want to make sure that your users are well supported, that that you have a team of people that are able to assist with the initial setup, answer any questions that they may have, and troubleshoot any issues like account lockouts and stuff like that. And then finally, you want to measure and monitor the multi-factor authentication logins and review failed login attempts, credential phishing that gets blocked. So if you see that in the logs, it shows that there's users that are putting in their passwords, but then the multi-factor authentication is failing or it's getting blocked, and you want to keep a close eye on that to see if there's any failed login attempts, and obviously review support tickets as well to see if there's a specific pattern, maybe that your instructions for enabling multi-factor or on how to use multi-factor could use some tweaking. I've included a link here to the Office 365 setup for multi-factor authentication as well, and I'll provide all of this information as well to anybody that wishes to have it. So I've got the slide deck here available. So multi-factor authentication isn't a switch you flip. I mean, it can be, but typically at an organizational level, if you do that, you'll have a lot of issues. So it's part of a move to continuous security and assessment that will take time and commitment to implement. But if you approach it the right way, it's also the single most effective step you could do to improve your security for your organization. So I threw that in there because that pretty much sums up multi-factor authentication in terms of protecting your critical data. The different forms of multi-factor authentication include a number of different types of devices. So I have here today, a number of different security keys that I personally use to secure the different accounts that I have. This one here is actually a more common security key. It's from a manufacturer called Ubico. And this device here just plugs into your USB slot. these are extremely durable, extremely resistant to water, and I use these on my keychain, and they never really break. There's no battery in there. It's just powered via the USB port. And this blue one here actually has NFC, so it allows me to scan it with my phone without having to plug it in to do the authentication. There's a number of different devices that you could get, such as this duo little fob here where you push the button and it shows a 6-digit code. So if somebody doesn't want to have anything installed on their phone, or if it's not a business provided phone, you're worried about having to provide compensation for your employees because they need to use their phone as part of their job. These are extremely popular as well. Again, it's a code that changes every 30 seconds to a minute. And when you go to log in, you put in your username, you put in your password, and then it prompts you for the 6-digit code. So a little bit more of a pain because you actually have to type in the code on your computer. The other one that we see here is on the iPhone, which essentially is the Microsoft Authenticator app. When you set up multi-factor authentication through the Authenticator app, it actually allows you to have push notification, which means when you're trying to log into, let's say, your Office 365 account, it will pop up on your phone automatically, and then you could just authorize it. A lot of the apps have integration with like the Apple Watch, and so you can get a push notification on your Apple Watch as well. Some of them get connected via USB, micro USB, Lightning. This one here actually has Bluetooth built in, and it uses, this is the Google Titan key is what they call it. So it works with the Google application on your iPhone to get logged in. You could also get phone calls or text messages, one-time passcodes, and email for different types of services that you use. Those work well also. And finally, passwordless authentication is kind of where things are going. So when you go to log into an account, you're just prompted through the third-party app to confirm that it really is you, and then you're able to log in. So Microsoft has multi-factor authentication now built in with Windows Hello for Business. So these are just a few screenshots of the actual Windows sign-in options for Windows 11. And if your device has a webcam that's built in, a lot of the newer laptops will have a Windows Hello compatible device. I just took the screenshot from my desktop computer. So obviously I didn't have a webcam that was Windows Hello compatible here when I took this, but it will actually do facial recognition. So when it sees that it's you, it'll use that as the second factor of authentication. If you have a laptop with a fingerprint reader, the fingerprint reader will also act as that second factor of authentication. It also, Windows Hello also supports a PIN code. So you can have a PIN code directly on your computer to get logged in. And my favorite one, the one that I use here on my desktop computer, is just a security key. So again, like a Ubico security key, this one here actually has biometrics built in. So my computer does not have a fingerprint reader. But when I plug this in, I simply put my thumb on the security key, and my fingerprint is built into it. Makes it extremely simple. I don't have to type in my password. I just walk up to my computer, put my thumb on there, and it logs me in. The other feature that I really like that I have set up on my computer here at the office is the dynamic lock. So the dynamic lock essentially is my phone. So when you set up the dynamic lock, it allows you to pair a Bluetooth device to your computer. And when the Bluetooth device is connected, dynamic lock shows that you're nearby. And then when you walk away with your phone, it automatically locks your computer because it can no longer see that that Bluetooth device is nearby. So anytime I walk away for any period of time with my phone, my computer locks. And when I get back, I just have to put in my fingerprint, my thumbprint on with the YubiKey that I have here on my desk, and I get logged back in. So if you're using Windows 10 or Windows 11, it's probably worthwhile looking at this Windows Hello option, the sign-in options for your computer. Passwords. So passwords are something that have always been an issue. I just wanted to touch on some of the do's and don'ts for passwords here. So a single password with one letter change, so such as password with an @ symbol and an exclamation mark at the end, doesn't make it a strong password. And most password hacking or password cracking lists have these variations of passwords here in multiple languages. Makes it extremely simple for hackers just to run through that list in an automated fashion and crack your passwords. It's also extremely important, like I mentioned, to not reuse your passwords. And the reason for that is because if a third-party service that you're using gets compromised and it's linked to your email account, then there are ways for hackers to automate the login with your email and that cracked password to a number of other popular apps and services like Facebook and Twitter, Instagram, anything else that you may be using. Netflix is another big one. So when we hear that there's been a breach and there's so many Netflix account and Disney Plus accounts that got compromised as a result, it's essentially just people using the same email address and the same password for everything, and another service got breached and they were using the same password and email for that. Don't use passwords with a pattern. So password 1, password 2, password 3, so on and so forth. Every time that you need to change your password, you just keep increasing the number. It's also bad practice. There's a number of other ones that I didn't put in here, such as your kid's name or an anniversary, a birthday, the street that you live on, your dog's name, your pet's name, your girlfriend's name, your boyfriend's name, all that sort of stuff. So you want to stay away from that because it makes it extremely simple for people that know you to guess those passwords. Using a reputable password keeper or password manager is also recommended because instead of trying to keep track of all these passwords yourself or having a pattern that you may be able to facilitate, remembering those passwords, this here just allows you to turn off your brain and keep everything all within the one password manager. Best practice that I like to use is I like to combine multiple unrelated words when I'm trying to create a password that needs to be memorable. The longer the password, the better. And then if you add some special characters and numbers, that'll make it even more secure. So 3 or 4 words together and throw in some special characters, maybe a couple numbers in there, and then you're good. And best practice is to use randomly generated passwords and obviously enable multi-factor authentication on the account. Some of the reputable password managers on the market now include 1Password, LastPass, Dashlane, Bitwarden, and Keeper. A lot of these password managers will also include additional features such as browser integration. So whether you're using Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge, Safari, Firefox, a lot of these have extensions that will tie in to the web browser that once you're logged into your password manager, it'll do stuff like autofill different websites that you're trying to log into based on what you have saved. It'll also allow you to generate new passwords when you're setting up a new account. It'll pre-populate different fields for you, such as your email account, your address, your phone number into web forms. It also will keep track of multiple addresses that you may have. So if if you have an address for home, you have an address for the office. If you're filling out, a web form for an order, you could choose to put in your work address or your home address. These are all things that are included in most reputable password managers nowadays. Some of the additional services that you'll also find is dark web monitoring. So essentially what that allows you to do is it allows you to make sure that if your email address is spotted somewhere on the dark web, or if it's been part of a breach through whatever service that you may be using, whether it be Facebook or LinkedIn, if that email account gets compromised, then your password manager will alert you and it will tell you, hey, your email has been part of a service that has been compromised, whether it be Facebook or whatnot, and it'll tell you, hey, part of this breach here included personally identifiable information such as your address or your telephone number, and it'll tell you also if the password got breached or if the third party didn't get access to the password or a hashed version of the password, which is just encrypted version of the password. And it'll allow you to go in and update that password, and it will show you which other passwords you have in your password manager that are the same as that. So you could go and change those passwords as well. It'll allow you to store such things as your digital wallet, so credit cards, photo ID if you want to keep a copy of that in there, passports, that sort of stuff. Now, you're probably thinking, if I'm going to be putting in all of my passwords in one location, including, my credit card information and my IDs, isn't that a risk? And, here's the important thing is that if you're using a reputable password manager, then all of the information that's stored in the password manager will be encrypted, and you could also enable multi-factor authentication to further protect that. So the password manager that I use, I need to use my security key to be able to log into it from a new device. There's also a password on it. It allows for fingerprint authentication, facial recognition on my phone with the iPhone, and it makes sure that everything is just nice and secure. One of the other things here that I wanted to also talk about is VPN. So a lot of the password managers now also offer a secure VPN. So if you're connecting in from a hotel, or if you're traveling through an airport, if you're at a coffee shop on your device, whether it be your mobile device or your laptop, the password managers now will often come with that VPN service. So some people are paying, for dark web monitoring, they're paying for VPN service. Typically what I've seen, I personally use Dashlane, and the cost for Dashlane is about $40 US for the entire year. That's less expensive than if you were to just purchase a VPN connection, a secure VPN connection from a lot of different third parties, let alone, dark web monitoring. So it makes it relatively low cost. There's a number of different options for businesses and for personal use, as well as family use. You could share passwords amongst, your organization securely through password managers and through your family as well. The email breach monitoring, like I was saying, these here are just the highlights of what it'll do and some of the different services here that you could sign up for. That some of them are free, some of them are paid, but you could list all of your email accounts in there, and it'll report to you. You'll be able to get an email saying, hey, this is the service here that got breached, and this is what they captured. It'll give you opportunity to go and log in, change your password. If you use that for other accounts, go and change the password for the other accounts as well. And you can also take additional steps to make sure that your financial data has been secured if that was part of the breach. So you could do stuff like, go and get a credit report, make sure that there's no new accounts that got opened in your name and whatnot. Single sign-on is also important when we're talking about passwords and multi-factor authentication, typically in a business environment. And single sign-on is something that is making it easier and easier for staff and for employees to log into a computer and just have access to all of the correct information that they need to without having to log into multiple websites and multiple services and whatnot. So you could tie in a number of different applications and hosted applications, cloud apps that you're already using to a specific set of credentials. So in our case here, we use Office 365. We've standardized, the central login around Office 365, and we tie in stuff like our HR application, like Bamboo HR, different websites that we use for our business applications. And so by logging into our computer with multi-factor authentication or passwordless authentication, then it automatically signs us into our email. My web browser that I use is Microsoft Edge. That's signed in as well. It allows me to sign into SharePoint and OneDrive and all those fun things without having to prompt the user to continuously, re-enter their credentials and re-log in. It makes it extremely simple. So if you're using multiple apps or multiple cloud services nowadays, you may want to consider single sign-on, or SSO for short. That will prevent your users from having to log in over and over and over again. It also makes it a lot easier to manage an organization. If you're a lot of users, when a new user starts, you could simply go and create one account, put them in the right groups from a management standpoint, IT aspect. It makes it extremely simple. You don't have to go and create multiple user accounts, multiple multi-factor authentication to secure all of those user accounts. And it makes it simple when a user leaves an organization, because we could just go in and disable the one account, and it disables access to all of the different services that are all tied together. No questions yet. Sounds good. Passwordless authentication. This is kind of where the future of authentication is going. So passwordless authentication is exactly that. I mean, you don't have a password to log into your account. And how do we achieve that? Well, new standards like web authentication and FIDO2, which is fast identity online, are enabling passwordless authentication across multiple platforms. This allows for my USB key, my security key here, to be entered into my computer, and I press the button, it scans my fingerprint, and it automatically logs me into my Office 365 account. The Microsoft Authenticator account is another good example of that. If I try to log in to my Office 365 email and I have passwordless authentication enabled, I could just simply go in. I will get a notice on my phone saying, yep, authorize, and then I'm logged in. And it does that securely because only I have access to that form of authentication, or that USB key with the fingerprint. And so here is kind of a diagram that shows the low security versus high security and the convenience factor as well for your employees. So by just having a password, it's really low security, but it's convenient. And by having passwords with two-factor authentication, it's got higher security, but it's still inconvenient because the user often has to type in the 6-digit code, or they have to click on an email, or they have to look at a text message. And then with passwordless authentication, it makes it simple. They get a push notification and they're logged in. I've included some instructions here on how to enable passwordless authentication for Microsoft 365. And this begins with downloading, again, that Microsoft Authenticator app that I've been talking about. The real benefit by using the Microsoft Authenticator app is that it will do the push notification. You don't have to go in and put in the 6-digit code. It will still display it in case that you're logging in from somewhere where your phone maybe not working, or you're not on the Wi-Fi and there's no cell service. You could simply put in that 6-digit code. You can manually type it in. So you do that via your Microsoft 365 account, and you go into the Authenticator app, and you could go and enable the phone sign in from the drop down for whatever account that you have registered there. And here's another quick link that just talks about the Microsoft 365 stuff on how to go passwordless. So the best practice for security and for making sure that your organization stays secure is to enable multi-factor authentication everywhere. Start now, don't start later. Don't don't delay it if you can. Make sure that if your account supports multi-factor authentication, that you're going in there and that you're enabling it. If your app supports passwordless authentication, then do that. The other one that I use is my Adobe account. So I use Adobe for electronic signatures, and I use Adobe for the Creative Suite. When I go to log into my Adobe online account, it prompts me on my phone through the Adobe app, and I don't have to put in a password. I just select yes, and I'm logged in. So the downside with this is that there's a lot of different applications out there, and they tend to get you to download their application to do the push notification. So your phone may get swamped with a number of different applications to support the security for those, but overall it's still more secure than just enabling a username and password or even multi-factor on that account. Some people like to use separate email accounts for business and personal use, and some organizations even use additional email accounts for business purposes. So they have an email account used for logins, and they have an email account used for communication. And this is extremely useful if you want to make sure that your main email account that's available to the public isn't known, is separate than the account that you use to log in to, let's say, your email or your line of business application. So there are ways of having that possible without either creating a separate mailbox. You could just set up an email alias and still have it secured that way. Subscribe to a dark web or /email monitoring service. Again, if you're using a password manager, a lot of the times that service will be included as part of your subscription with a password manager. Don't share passwords via email. I've seen this time and time again where somebody gets phished, they lose access to their mailbox, and the hacker third party starts doing scans within the mailbox to find all of the user's passwords. It's pretty simple. You do a search for the word password, and it's there in plain text, typically in your sent items or in your emails. Same goes for credit cards and any type of confidential information that you don't want the whole world to see. I would make sure that that doesn't get shared via email. Invest in security awareness training for your team. This is extremely, extremely important. You'll see a lot of the larger organizations now have this. The person is always the weakest point of your security. So the human aspect of things, there's always somebody that's going to click on something. There's always somebody that will get convinced that it's a legitimate request, give remote access or give access to their emails. These types of services here exist because this happens on a daily basis. I know that a lot of the scams that are out there are pretty obvious, but some of them are getting more and more convincing, and people are falling for it every day. So by doing the security awareness training, it helps train your team of people to better identify what is a phishing attempt and how to identify that as part of the email, as part of the reply address, as part of the email headers. And if they do click on an email that was a phishing attempt, part of the security awareness training, then it'll provide them with additional instructions on how to identify that or how to better identify that in the future, to make sure that they don't fall for it for one that wasn't, a part of the training exercise. And finally, keep your computers updated, not only with the latest Windows updates and security updates, but all of the applications that you use. You want to create a layered approach to security. You want to have multiple fail safes. So if one aspect of security fails, the other one should hopefully catch it and use the least amount of privilege that you need. So for instance, my Office 365 account for my email is simply just a standard user. I just have access to the things that I need to have access to, and I don't have super admin powers. I use a separate Office 365 account that has, the top level access, the top level administrative access. So even as an owner of a business here, I don't have kind of all the keys to the kingdom. I secure that with another account that I don't typically stay logged into, to make sure that if my own email account does happen to get compromised, that the hackers don't have access to everything. One of the things here that we do for our clients is we set up, we call this great security, and this is an endpoint protection. This I just wanted to include to show you what we do in terms of layering the security aspect of things. So we start off by having an endpoint detection response software, which is kind of like the new age next generation antivirus on all of the computers. And then we prevent external threats from coming in via like phishing attempts and whatnot. If a user does click on something that is known for malware, then our advanced DNS protection will actually block that. So if a user is clicking on a link in an email, for instance, and it's going to a malware source, it will display that page has been blocked and that it is malware. Real-time privilege management helps us mitigate kind of the risk of third parties automatically installing software or malware automatically getting installed, or potentially, an attempt to really truly install malware on a computer and ransomware. And so by default, we have a list of approved software that is authorized for installation. So on my office computer here, I don't even have the rights to install any new software, excuse me. So if, for instance, I try to install Adobe Acrobat Reader, that is a piece of software that has been explicitly authorized on the software, so I would be able to install it. But if I'm trying to install another software that hasn't been authorized, then I would be prompted with a pop-up that would say, hey, you're trying to install this. Do you want to continue? I would select yes. It would open up a ticket here with our help desk, and our help desk team would see that, and they'd be able to assess it to see if, yes, it's legit software, if it's got any known malware or ransomware built into it, if it's digitally signed. There's a number of different things here that we look at, and then we could approve it that one time. We could approve it for that computer, that user, that organization, or for all of our clients. So it's something that we manage on an ongoing basis, and it really just allows us to prevent, malware and ransomware from getting installed. The Microsoft and third-party patching, the update stage here is extremely important. We want to make sure that computers get updated on an ongoing basis so that known vulnerabilities or potentially unknown vulnerabilities as well aren't a significant threat or aren't as significant of a threat for the organization. And then finally, the detection stage, the managed breach detection. So we have agents on all the computers that we manage that allow us to get notified if a breach does happen, or if there's anything that's malicious that gets installed on the computer. An incident and an investigation happens by a third party cybersecurity team of experts, and we're notified right away. So the layered approach to security is definitely something that is extremely important in all organizations, and this can be done at a relatively low cost. I know that larger organizations have significant budget for that, but it's still possible even in a small medium business. And finally, the security awareness training, like I was saying, it's extremely important for all of your users to make sure that they're protected and make sure that they're able to identify what is a threat and what is a valid email that would come in. This is extremely, extremely important for users in an organization that typically get a lot of emails or requests from third parties, invoicing. So finance department is a huge one. There's a lot of finance departments that get invoices from all over the country or all over the world, often for things that they're not aware of. The security awareness training provides a lot of useful insight for those individuals in those departments. Finally, we've got just some of the sources here where I got a lot of my information. And I will take you through kind of a demo on how to set up multi-factor authentication here on Office 365. So I will just take 1 second here. If you have any questions, feel free to request to get unmuted or pop a question into the chat. I'd be happy to answer those for you.
I am just, first of all, I love live demonstrations, so I'm really happy you're doing this because I oftentimes struggle with step by step. Also, at some point I felt personally attacked about the password 1, password 2, but you know what, it's fine. I got over it. So that's been really helpful so far. And yeah, just to echo what Paul said, if anybody is interested in asking a question, again, you can type in the chat or just simply unmute yourself as we continue to go along here.
There may actually be a giveaway if you do ask a question. I've got a handful of these new security keys here from Ubico, which they are nice and small. I will open up this new one here just to show you how to set this up here within Office 365. And I'll just go ahead here and share my screen again. I will share my entire desktop this time. What could possibly go wrong? So here I'm logged in. We have a test account that we set up for a fake company called ABC Bus Lines, and I'm already logged in here. And this taskbar is just taking up a little bit too much room. So this is the email account, which I've logged into. Simple password, potentially no authentication. And if we click on the user account, and if we go to move this here, view the account, you'll see all of the security controls here. This is within Office 365. You could change the password. You could go to the settings and privacy, my sign-ins. I've got the my sign-ins page opened up here. So as we could see, there's already the Authenticator app set up. If I wanted to add this security key, I would simply click on add a sign-in method. And this organization does not support, so you have to talk to your administrator to enable security keys, and then you'll be able to add this. So as it is with any live demos, we've run into a snag here already. Let's just go through the authentication app setup. This is something that is enabled by default but the security key is definitely something that needs to be turned on from the administrator panel in the back. So when we're setting up Microsoft Authenticator here, this is the app that goes on your smartphone. So either Apple device or Android device, whatever your flavor of choice is. And I will also add that on the Android devices, you could have multiple profiles. You could have a work profile and a business profile if you don't want to mix both together, which is extremely useful. It will give you the option to go and download the Microsoft Authenticator app. If you want to use a different app like Duo Security, which I also use for different multi-factor authentication that I have set up with other applications, you could do that as well. Just note that you will not get the push notification. So I will just click on next. I will be prompted here to basically log in. It'll give me a QR code that I could scan with my phone. So when I go into the Microsoft Authenticator app that I've already downloaded on my phone, and I'm trying to add a new account here, I will be able to go in and click on the little plus symbol in the app, select work or school account, because this is a work account, and I will be able to use the scan QR code, which will allow me to log into this account and add the multi-factor authentication to this account. And when I click on next here, I will simply just go in and in the app, I will get an approved sign-in. So now it says deny or approve. I click on approve and it's been set up. So now when I go to log into this account the next time, and I will do that right now just to show you, I will just go and sign out. The next time that I go into the email here, which I will sign out on this screen here as well. I will be prompted for multi-factor authentication. And since I had just Authenticator set up before, it defaults to that. I just haven't changed the default, but I will go sign in another way and I will use the Microsoft Authenticator app. And now I get a pop-up on my phone. I just click on approve and it will log me in. Now I have access to the email. I can see the presentation that I emailed earlier to myself, and I've logged into the account successfully. Any questions or comments or concerns? Pretty quiet crowd.
I might have one. So you can effectively do this for any mailing platform, emailing platform, I would imagine.
Definitely. So, I mean, if you're using Gmail, you could also enable that through the Google platform. Also, this is something that more and more third-party apps are supporting. I mean, I've got 75 different accounts enabled through my Duo Security with multi-factor authentication. There's a number of different things here, from VPN remote connectivity into your office that you could set up multi-factor authentication for, some services that I use for personal use, some services that I use for enterprise use. Any of the systems that I'm getting connected to remotely into my organization, or even internally into my organization, we have multi-factor authentication enabled for. It really ensures that unauthorized access doesn't happen. And unauthorized access nowadays is something that every organization just dreads. The last thing that you want to have to do is explain to your clients or to the public that you've been breached and that there's been a loss of data or loss of personally identifiable information, credit cards, customer information, your own HR information. These are the types of things here that hackers are going for, and it's not uncommon for even small organizations to get infected and get ransom in this fashion. So I mean, typically in the past, organizations would just say, well, why do people care about anything that I have, right? I'm just a small business, operating in Northern Ontario. Nobody really cares about the data that I have, or I don't really have any important data, but most organizations still do. And that data may be, HR data, maybe payroll data, maybe client data. So by enabling multi-factor authentication and by just securing your data, that's that's the best way to make sure that your organization doesn't become one of the organizations that are breached and that show up in the media. And this happens to organizations of all sizes, universities and governments and large enterprise and small businesses like yours and mine. So
yeah, and I think we obviously recognize that a lot of these phishing scams and what have you are desperate and will do anything. So I mean, if you have a weak link in the chain, they'll go for it, no doubt.
Definitely. I mean, in the last several years, it's been easier and easier for third parties to get away with, ransoming information. I mean, before cryptocurrency, it was a lot harder, right? You had to convince somebody to go to a store and buy a prepaid, gift card and give you the code for the prepaid gift card, or go to Western Union and send you a money order. With cryptocurrency now, it makes it very easy for a third party just to gain, financial gain money without being identified. So that's what we're seeing nowadays, is that there's ransom, and the ransom's getting higher and higher, and companies are paying it because they weren't properly secured, they don't have proper backups, or it's a huge damage to the organization. So they pay the hacker in cryptocurrency, which makes it extremely difficult to get tracked. Not saying that it's not impossible. There's a lot of breaches that were resolved as part of identifying which cryptocurrency exchange it got cashed in on, or who opened the account, because a lot of the cryptocurrency exchanges, you have to provide your passport or your driver's license, and some people don't think, and they provide all that information, and then they try to cash out through there. So there have been some breaches that have been solved as a result, but it still makes it extremely difficult for an organization of any size to navigate through.
And just to put that into context, Paul, I mean, any sort of data breach obviously, grinds your business to a halt. Is there sort of a, let's say a small to medium-sized business, what's that cost? What's that average cost look like if there is a significant data breach?
Yeah, I don't have that information with me, but it's significantly higher than what you would imagine, because there's a number of things that go into it. And as one of the stats that I remember extremely well is that 70% of businesses that have a disaster where the information has been lost, whether it be encrypted, and they're not able to recover that, 70% of those businesses go out of business within 1 year. So definitely, making sure that your network and that your information is secure is definitely one way to prevent that. Making sure that your backups are up to date and that can't be accessed remotely or can't be deleted remotely, or when a hacker does get access to your organization, is also extremely important. Like anything else, it's not a matter of if you'll be breached, it's just a matter of when, and what you could do to kind of segment that in terms of making sure that if an account does get breached, it doesn't have kind of the keys to the kingdom, is what goes into that careful planning at the enterprise level to enable across all of the users within the organization to make sure that you're sufficiently protected.
Beyond that, is there any sort of mail service that exists, Hotmail, Gmail, Outlook, Yahoo, I don't even know, AOL, that are probably discouraged to use because of their potential increased breachability?
Well, a lot of email services have gotten significantly better at doing that. I know, like, even Google has been extremely security aware. So when you're trying to log into like your Gmail account, whether it be a personal email account, even it's asking for an additional level of authentication, whether it's sending you a text message on your phone, or if you need to authorize backup email. That's all very refreshing to see that organizations are taking security and privacy extremely they're making it a priority is nice. From a business standpoint, I would strongly recommend using a business class email service. This allows for central management. It allows the organization to be able to go and manage an individual email account if a user does forget their password or loses their multi-factor authentication. A lot of people, it's not uncommon for somebody to come into the office after a long weekend to say, hey, I got a new phone, or I went to the beach and I dropped my phone in the lake. So there are a number of different ways to essentially manage that at a enterprise level. And if you're setting up multi-factor on a personal level for any of your accounts, you'll also notice that when multi-factor is being set up, that it'll give you a list of backup codes. Those backup codes are there for a reason. Safeguard, keep those, save them somewhere, or print them up and store them somewhere safe, because if you no longer have access to the mobile device that you had the multi-factor authentication set up on, you will need those backup codes to get access to it. And they do this to make sure that nobody just calls in, pretends they're you, and convinces them to give access to your multi-factor account.
Well, Paul, this has been an excellent overview. I think, some of us get slightly irritated when we see those sort of roadblocks to say, oh, we'll send you a text message, or you need to back up or something. But I mean, ultimately, it's far better than the alternative, which is a massive breach of potentially very sensitive material, whether it's personal or through your business as well, and the damages that can fall out from that. At this time, I just wanted to take an opportunity to thank MJ Philo, our interim director for NEOnet, for their support of the technology integration pillar. They've been an excellent partner and excellent support. And again, do reach out to her if you do have any interest in some of the programs that they're running, including the BTIF programs and the Digital Main Street as well. To Paul, not only as our board member for the Chamber, but also for all your work at Great White North Technology. I know that we at the Chamber do appreciate all the services that you provide to us and for the information that you provided today. Any final words, Paul?
Yeah, multi-factor authentication, and maybe 3 seconds out of your day that you have to, take a little bit longer to get into the accounts that you log into, but it's definitely worthwhile. It'll save you a lot of work and a lot of heartache if you do get compromised. Do check your emails. I will raffle off one of these UB keys. So I will reach out to Cameron and we'll contact the winner. I'll send you your security key.
All right. So the word of the day is TUFA. and
Oofa.
always love a good raffle. So thank you very much, everybody, for attending today. Thanks for your support of your chamber. Do keep an eye on our Chamber Insights email or our website for future and upcoming events. We do have one on succession planning with Lisa Wilson that is actually happening tomorrow. So if you are interested, head over to our website under our events section. Once again, thanks to Paul Brunet and thanks to NJ Philo. Have a great day. Stay safe. Stay authenticated.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye now.
Bye.